Thank you, Chris, for joining us today at the SRP's 7th America's Structured Products and Derivatives Conference. Chris Schell is partner at Davis Polk & Wardwell. Chris, what do you think are the biggest industry challenges at the moment?
So I guess there's probably a couple. I think one, just looking at the industry as a whole, there's obviously been significant growth in the United States in structured products, and I think the question is going to be, and I think this has been addressed at the conference today, is how much more growth is there, how much more penetration to the financial advisors will be for structured products. So I think there's going to be challenges around that, and to see if this growth can continue. It's obviously going to be affected by the equity markets generally, the commodity markets, and the rest as well, the general economy. Probably the other sort of near-term challenge, I'd say, is on the regulatory side. I think we've seen quite a lot of deregulatory initiatives in the United States in the last year or so. But there's one area that affects structured products, I think, that will have an impact, and that is around the sort of the fiduciary rule and the best interest rule. So, as you may know, the Department of Labor had a rule that they had proposed last year that came into effect in large part, that then got put in abeyance by the new administration. That rule looks like it is going to be, if not withdrawn, is not going to go forward. There was a lawsuit against the rule in the Fifth Circuit in the United States, which was successful, and without an appeal by the DOL, it would put a stop to their rule. And it doesn't look like the DOL is going to appeal that decision. So that's probably going to be the state of play on that side. At the same time, however, the SEC has jumped in with its own rule called Reg Best Interest, and it is looking to put in place a sort of a similar framework as what the DOL was looking at on brokers in the United States, where there will be more obligations on them to look after, for the quote, best interests of their clients. It's much narrower rule and a much more understandable rule than probably the DOL rule is. It picks up on some concepts in U.S. law that are already in existence, such as some of the suitability determinations that FINRA has already long had in the marketplace. However, it would impose, if it's adopted in the proposed form, quite a few additional obligations on the marketplace, including certain record-keeping, notice, conflicts of interest, requirements, and it would apply to a much broader set of people than some of the existing FINRA regulation. For example, it would apply to certain sales to institutional investors, as not just to retail investors. It remains to be seen how that rule will change, if at all, over the comment period. There's a comment period that has started. The SEC will gather in comments from the industry, from investor groups, and the rule could change as a result of that. I think the betting line right now is that the rule will come into effect, though, in some form in the coming year or so, and the sales of structured products will then need to comply with that new rule. So I think that's going to be that's probably on the regulatory side, probably the biggest challenge right at the moment, I'd say, in terms of at least uncertainty as to exactly how the sales practices may need to change in the U.S. market.
Yeah, it certainly sounds so. Thank you, Chris, and hopefully we will see how this all develops by the next conference.
Mm-hmm.
And about the conference itself, you have been attending it for a number of years now. Mm-hmm. So how do you find it? How do you find the event?
I think it's very good. It's obviously a way for the industry to get together. You always had regulators at the conference, which has always been useful to hear their perspective on it. And you also have an ability to bring in large numbers of buy side and sell side together. And I think just hearing those perspectives, for example, the panel that I moderated this morning on distribution platforms had a number of innovative new platform providers, from Goldman to Halo to Navient, and I think that's an example of where this market probably is going to start going. And to hear how the people who have first started creating those kinds of platforms are thinking about them, what the challenges that they face, how they're finding they're being used, both on the issuer side and on the distributor side, I think is actually very useful for us all to hear. So no, I obviously think it's a it's a very good conference.
Thanks very much, and I hope we'll see you again.
Okay, sure, yeah, absolutely.